So Greece has decided to buck the trend in the rest of the world and make the work week longer for many workers. The law just went into effect this month, and it is a spectacularly bad idea that will backfire in the worst possible way. And in this video, I'm going to prove it with science. But first, what does the new law actually say, and why are they passing it? According to the new law, Greek companies can now compel employees to work more hours. It's been widely reported in the media as a move to a 6-day work week, but in reality, that's only part of the truth. Some workers will have to either work 6 8-hour days or an extra 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. Each of these options will take the work week from 40 to 48 hours. In return, they will get slightly higher wages. They'll get a 40% wage increase for the extra hours or more for working on Sundays. The law doesn't apply in all workplaces, only in private companies that operate around the clock in shifts and which are facing labor shortages, so they are finding it hard to get workers. The current Greek government is pro-business, and they believe that this law will boost the economy by addressing a lack of skilled employees. This new law is extra ironic because Greece already has the longest working hours per worker of any European country and the 7th highest in the OECD. Now, many countries are currently facing similar challenges. It's hard to get new skilled employees, in part due to falling birth rates and other factors. And that makes it tempting to assume that we can make up for a lack of workers by making existing workers work more hours, right? And indeed, many countries and workplaces are just itching to make people work more. For instance, right here in Denmark, the government just canceled one of our beloved annual public holidays because they claim we need to boost productivity to counter the threat posed by Putin and Russia. I'm not even kidding. And I'm sure Putin is just quaking with fear now that Danes will have to work one more day every year. In reality, this is not going to work. Research clearly shows that increasing working hours is going to have the opposite effect and hurt the economy. In this video, I'm going to present 6 reasons why. First of all, let me make this very clear. Greek companies will not be any more productive or profitable with a 6-day work week. Why not? It's really not a big mystery. When employees work more hours, they get more tired. They lose cognitive capacity, which means that overworked people are less productive, less creative, and make worse decisions and more mistakes. Studies even show that overwork makes you dumber. A study of British government workers found that those who worked longer hours scored lower on various cognitive tests than their co-workers who worked just 40 hours a week. Now, in any discussion like this, it's very important to make a clear distinction between productivity and output. Output is how much work a given person or team or company completes. It's like a certain number of widgets produced in a factory or lines of code written in a tech company, for instance. Productivity, on the other hand, is output per hour worked, so how much gets produced per hour worked by employees. For instance, if a car factory with 1,000 employees makes 80 cars in an 8-hour shift, their output that day is 80 cars, and their productivity is 0.01 car per man-hour worked. Now, many people accept that a person who works 60 hours a week, for instance, will probably be less productive than one working 40 hours. They intuitively get that the last 20 hours are probably going to be less effective than the first 40. I asked about this on LinkedIn, and people just get that. Only 17% believe that more working hours would lead to higher output. And this is not a new discovery. We've known this for over a century. Back in World War I, the British Army desperately wanted to maximize the output of their munitions factories. So what do? They make workers work more hours. They made them work up to 90 hours a week because that would clearly lead to more production, more output, right? Wrong. That mysteriously didn't work, so they started gathering data that connected working hours to output and found something very curious. This graph shows actual output, not productivity, versus hours worked for 2 groups of women workers doing 2 different kinds of tasks. As you can see, beyond a certain number of hours, in this case 51 a week, working more hours did not increase output. Every hour worked after that was essentially wasted, And the hours that were worked between 40 and 51 had a very, very low return on investment because productivity was already dropping there. We have known this since 1917. This effect has been found again and again in many different studies from both factory settings and office-type knowledge work. Now, granted, Greece isn't moving workers to a 90-hour work week, fortunately, but like only 48 hours every week. But the data shows very clearly that a 20% increase in hours will not lead to a 20% increase in production. So if Greece is hoping that companies will be overall more profitable and therefore boost the economy, the data shows the exact opposite. This will lead to lower productivity and output among Greek businesses. So overwork is bad for the workplace, right? But it's even worse for employees. Studies show that permanent overwork is connected with a long list of mental and physical health problems, including strokes, depression, alcoholism, diabetes, and heart disease. This is not just bad for the individual worker who might suffer from these problems, it's also going to hurt Greek workplaces. If the problem they're seeking to address is a lack of qualified workers, you don't want your current workers to get sick and miss a ton of work. And of course, more illness among Greek workers will also hurt the Greek economy because it will increase healthcare costs. Also, a longer work week will lead to more workplace accidents. Research shows that an increase in normal hours worked increases injury risk because workers are more fatigued. This is especially relevant for Greece because most of the workplaces that can extend hours under this new law will probably be in manufacturing. Reason number 4. This is so obvious that you hardly need to say it, but if you're working 6 days a week, your work-life balance is going to suffer. You'll have less time for your family, your friends, your children, your partner, your hobbies, and everything else in your life. Research clearly shows that longer working hours lead to impaired sleep, job stress, worse partner relationships, worse family relationships, lower life satisfaction, and more burnout. And again, more burnout leads to more workers being absent from work and higher healthcare costs for the country. Reason number 5, brain drain has been a huge problem for Greece. The financial crisis hit that country especially hard, and the tough economy made hundreds of thousands of mostly young and well-educated people leave and find work in other countries. Authorities estimate that 600,000 young professionals left to work abroad between 2010 and 2021. Greece really wants them back. Given that the younger generations at work tend to value work-life balance, how do you think they're going to like the prospect of being forced to work 6 days a week? Imagine you're a young Greek working in Denmark where the official work week is 37 hours, and moving back might mean working 48 instead. Or imagine you're a young Greek currently working in Greece whose workplace is looking to go to a 6-day work week. Might this not be exactly the thing that inspires you to find work in a different country? If Greece is looking to reverse the brain drain and bring young professionals back to the country, this is exactly the wrong thing to do. Okay, one last problem with Greece's new law. While people can be forced into the workplace for a longer time every week, that doesn't mean they'll be working productively for all of that time. Forced overwork leads to a ton of unproductive time where people are at work, but little real work is getting done. This is deeply frustrating for workers because not only is that time taken away from the rest of your life, that time is wasted and you know it's wasted. Nobody likes to waste time. Also, studies show that when the workplace mandates long working hours, people tend to lie about how many hours they work. They tend to fake it. And managers are easy to fool, it turns out. One study found that managers couldn't tell the difference between those of their employees who actually worked 80 hours a week and those who just pretended to. My prediction is that this is going to backfire spectacularly for all of these 6 reasons. Companies will be less productive, employees will be more sick, leading to higher healthcare costs for the country, and more Greeks who are able to will flee the country or stay abroad in countries that have more reasonable working hours. What should Greece or any other country looking to boost the economy then do instead? Well, first of all, they could have looked at all the countries that have tested a 4-day work week and found it to work exceptionally well, like Iceland, where it's been called an overwhelming success. They should also look at policies that maximize workers' welfare. Any government has an interest in passing public policies that strengthen the competitive advantage of companies in your country, sure. But very often they do this by cutting corporate taxes, by deregulation, or attempts to increase working hours, right? None of which have much of a track record of success. If a government is truly serious about giving companies a sustained, strong competitive advantage, they should really focus on policies that create happier workplaces. This would not only be good for the companies and the employees, it would also be good for the national economy because it would boost national productivity and reduce absenteeism, stress, and related healthcare costs. I have an article on 11 policies that nations can implement to create a competitive advantage because happy workers are more productive. I'll link to that in the video description. Another thing Greece could have done that I also mentioned in that article is invest in training existing workers. The unemployment rate in Greece is over 10%, so there are plenty of people without jobs. They may not currently have the skills and competencies that companies are looking for, but that's why you train them. But most of all, Greece and any other country that wants to boost its economy could have focused on maximizing output and profitability, not hours worked. And they need to realize that those two are very different things. If they had spent just a little bit of time looking at the available research on overwork, they would have realized very quickly that a longer work week is actually going to hurt, not help. If you want a really good overview on all of the reasons why long working hours are terrible for workplaces and employees, I have an entire 1.5 hour long video on why that is and how we stop it. I'm going to link to that in the video description as well. So just to be clear, I'm not saying that Greece's new law is completely useless. You see, other countries are already looking at this law and asking if they could do the same. And I have every confidence that when this law inevitably backfires in Greece, and it will, that failure will warn any other countries away from trying something similar. So I guess we should all thank Greece for that, at least. Stay happy.